Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our session today, How to Find and Keep Major Donors, a Major Gift Masterclass. All right, we have a great session for you today, lots of information, so we are going to go ahead and get started. As we're doing introductions, the chat is open. We would love to hear from you. Let us know your name, where you're joining us from, so we can see who we have on. There also is the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Any questions, please put them in that Q&A box so we can keep track, and we will have a Q&A session at the end. All right, so going through our panel today, we have Sean, who is the nonprofit fixer. Hi, Sean, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing great. And then we have Chris Fink, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Arriva. How are you, Chris?
I'm well. Thank you, Gabby. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Sean, for being here.
And then I'm Gabriella Salemi. I'm our Director of Marketing here at Arriva, and I will be your moderator for today's session. All right, Sean, I'll pass it over to you.
Excellent. So today, again, Sean Kosofsky here, I'm living in New York City, but originally from Detroit. I always give a shout out to Detroit, my hometown. So today we're going to be boosting your knowledge and confidence about major gifts, major donors, conversations with these folks, how to create the conditions for a yes. I see a lot of fundraising is creating the conditions for success, not always soliciting, not always researching, but just you're creating the conditions for a yes. How to use psychology and persuasion to close gifts and close larger gifts. Also, we're going to talk about the role of research and rapport in nailing a major gift, how framing, workshopping, and pivoting will help you, how to be more opportunistic, and also learn the 16 concrete and immediately useful tips that you can apply to your fundraising. And I'm also going to give away some free articles and tools today for folks. So
Awesome. All right, before getting into our next section, I do have a few questions that we'd love to hear your responses on. We would love to know, how does your organization primarily identify major donor prospects? You might be doing all of these. We give you the option to choose one, though. Is it reviewing past giving history, board or staff referrals, wealth screening, prospect research tools, event engagement, and relationship tracking? Maybe you're doing all of those, so you have a selection to choose that, or we don't have a formal process. We'd love to hear from you guys on that. All right, and I'll go ahead and share these results. So majority of you are doing all of that. 29% don't have a formal process, 19% reviewing giving history, and then a few on board and staff referrals and event engagement. And then last question, we would love to know, how confident are you in your current ability to identify major donor prospects already existing within your database? All right, I'm looking at our results here. So 60% of you are somewhat confident, but it's very manual, followed by not very confident. And then we're not actively segmenting for major gifts. And then 6% are very confident. All right, and then I'll pass it over to you, Chris. Oh, Chris, you're on mute.
How's that?
There we go.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Gabby. And thanks to everybody who joined, especially on the East Coast. It's getting almost happy hour time for most of you on the East Coast, right? But it's only 1 o'clock for me here on the West Coast. But if any of you have watched any webinars with me in the past, you know, I will always lecture about quality data, clean data. And I talk to organizations every week. And invariably, I always end up talking to some that are dealing with issues with their data, right? And ultimately, you know, if we're going to talk about major gifts and surfacing those donors, potential donors, prospects that you're going to start reaching out to, you have to start with quality data and connected data. And what I mean by connected data is that, you know, having your data in one place or more as easily accessible as possible, so that you can get that really 360-degree view of a prospect or a donor. Understanding what their giving history is, what's their largest, last gift, etc. What their event attendance has been recently. What's their engagement with you in terms of social and email and regular mail, past conversations, relationships they've had with any one of you or your board members, committee members, um, those relationships they may have with people through staff. I mean, all that information, a lot of it tends to unfortunately live in people's heads. Institutional memory, it's not documented. And as you all know, and if you don't know, you should, the tenure of development officers in nonprofit organizations is woefully short, year and a half about, maybe even less. So keeping all this information documented and accurate is incredibly important for the legacy of your organization, and also for finding and retaining those key donors, especially on the major donor side, right? So I just want to talk a little bit about that, and it's going to help you eliminate those missed opportunities, right? Having those connected systems, having accurate data, and it's also going to enable you to really be more intelligent about how you're segmenting your donors. Instead of really, hoping you're prioritizing right, you can really, use giving patterns and engagement behavior to just focus your time on where it will have the greatest impact ultimately, right? And you need to be as efficient as possible, especially now when there's more than ever more competition for those donations out there. There's more dollars being given year over year overall, but there's fewer donors out there. So and the reality is you're competing for those dollars. So, all right, Gabby, let's go to the next slide. So identifying major donors in your database, this is something that I see clients struggle with. I see prospects struggling with it. Some of it has to do with accurate data and complete data and having that well-rounded picture, like I was talking about in the last slide. But also I think sometimes people don't even know where to start, right? And Sean's gonna really talk about this too, but I'll just give my 2 cents, which is, really, again, your that data your donor database is one of your most valuable assets. You need to treat it that way, and it tells you where you're winning and where you're losing donors. And by analyzing those patterns in giving history, their retention rates, like I said, their preferred channels of communication, and what those engagements are through those channels can really uncover actionable insights ultimately, right? For example, when you're identifying which donors lapse, year to year, or which channels are giving you the highest first time donations, that really helps you make smarter decisions, right? About, where to focus your efforts, how to communicate to people, where to direct them on how to give. And that's where segmentation and integrated prospect research really turns that information into action. And for example, so using that data that you have, but also using external data can be incredibly valuable on the prospect research side, especially when it comes to major donor interactions, right? So not only will you be able to see your own data and what their giving patterns are and history is, if any, but also you can use, like for example, Ariva has relationships with prospect research firms like Donor Search, and it's fully integrated. So you just click a button, it grabs information from Donor Search, brings it in. It gives you information around what their propensity to give is to your organization, what their potential capacity is. It's not always completely accurate, but it really tries to give you a sense of what their capacity to give is to your organization. Are they giving you $20 a year when they could be giving you potentially 20,000? That is important information to have, and there's a ton of information that you can get through those external sources, like through donor search and prospect research firms, that really can help you identify who your potential major donors are. All right, let's go to the next slide, Gabby. All right, let's let Sean.
All right. Is it me?
Yeah, there you go.
God, there you go. I think I thought I heard you cut off in the middle of a sentence. I was like, when is my moment? Okay, that's fine. I'm going to put something in the chat for everyone. During my presentation, I'm going to link. Sometimes these things come across not
Oh
really.
yeah, that's great. That link you just, yes.
Yeah, let me know if those don't work as links for folks who can cut and paste them. But I'm going to talk about these two things during the presentation. So we're going to
Awesome.
dive right in. There's a lot to go through. So I'm going to try to move at a good pace. So pay attention, take screenshots if there's something particularly interesting, but I think folks are going to get some of this later. So going into major donor fundraising, this is the most stressful part of all fundraising. And I think that a lot of people get all up in their head about it. So you have to be kind of mentally and emotionally prepared to talk with anyone, a stranger, a friend, anyone you know for money, especially when it's a major gift. But I tell people to reframe what you're doing in a number of ways. I have a much larger training on mindset shifts and perspective shifts. But one of the things I want you to think about is that they are the donor, you are the doer. It's a handshake. It's a business relationship. You're asking someone to pitch in and you're going to do the work, right? The people that are involved in the nonprofit are doing the work. The donor is the one funding it all. So it's a partnership. So you're not really asking for a favor. You're inviting people to be part of this partnership, right? It takes both parties to do this. And what you're doing is you're moving wealth from where it lives to where it can change lives. Right now, bank money is sitting in bank accounts all over America doing no good. It's doing no good whatsoever. But in your bank account, it can do a lot. So fundraising is basically just moving wealth from where it lives to where it can save lives. It's moving money from one bank account to another bank account, yours. That's basically it's just a transactional thing where you're inviting people to shift where these dollars live so that they can go be put to use for good. Don't take no's personally. If someone says no, it could be because they're overcommitted, because they're such a giver. They're doing so much for charity that they can't give more. It's nothing personal. It's not about you. It's not about your mission. And also see fundraising as a joy and as a fun challenge, like a problem to solve, right? Instead of like some stressful thing you have to do. And just remember, you're not asking for people for a favor. You're inviting them to solve a social problem or environmental problem. That's what you're doing. You're doing them the favor, right? Because people are just sitting around, going about their lives, looking after their kids, reading a book, going to work. And it isn't until someone invites them to solve a social problem that they're invited to participate in something awesome. So who doesn't love an invitation, right? So fundraising is really about inviting people to do something. And you're doing them a favor by including them. And who doesn't like to be included, right? So if you are meeting with the donor already, you're probably 75% of the way to the gift. If they said yes to the meeting, they know an ask is probably coming, and they know that they're probably going to say yes to something. So you're most of the way there. Next slide. So do your research and prepare. Do homework to help build rapport when you get into that meeting with the donor. So one of the things I do sometimes if I'm going to be meeting with a donor is I'll set up a Google alert on them. So anytime they're making news or anytime they publish something or anytime they're making history or anything like that, I might get a Google alert about them. If you don't know how to use Google Alerts, they're easy, they're free. You can just go to the Google Alerts and set up that for anything you're tracking on the internet. You can also go to LinkedIn or Facebook. There's lots of different ways to see what's going on in someone's life from these different social channels. If someone's posting lots of articles from another nonprofit or a cause or a board they're on, or they're just taking lots of pictures of them fishing, this is information for when you go into that meeting. Like, oh, you love fishing. I love fishing. These are the things you want to know before you go into a major donor meeting is like, look at what things are interesting to them. And you're going to mention those when you go into the meeting. Okay. If you have not done your research before going into the meeting, you have not checked their bio, if you've not checked LinkedIn or Facebook, you've not done a Google search or anything like that, you can look quickly around their office. If you're meeting in their office or their home, what's on their walls? What's on their desk? What matters to them? Is there a picture of them winning the biggest pumpkin at the fair? Like you're going to mention this. So you're going to be looking around for information that quickly allows you to do something I'm going to talk about in the next step, which is you're going to make a connection. The connection in the first 3 minutes of a major donor ask is critical to making the meeting have a great energy and usually turn into a yes. So one of the links I put in the chat is for this one. In order to do a little bit of very, very basic donor prospecting research before a meeting, I wrote a blog post about this. That's one of the 2 free tools I'm going to give away today is that article. So you can go click on that and go over to my website. Next slide. So building rapport is really, really critical. I have a really good rate of getting gifts during major donor asks. I think it's because I do these things. So you want to make an early connection, even plan for it. This is vital. I think in the first few minutes of a meeting, you're going to want to say something that has nothing to do with business and has everything to do with something you guys have in common. And it could be something you saw online, or it could be like you're both wearing the same jacket, or if you just look for something in common, like you're both from the same state, or you both have something in common, and mention that, talk about that right at the top, or something funny. It needs to start off light, especially if you're meeting this person for the first time. If it's already a friend, then you don't have to do all this. But when you're meeting someone new, you want to make that early connection. It totally changes the energy versus a little bit of awkwardness or just pleasantries. Finding some sort of connection is important. There's a Spanish word, conocimiento, which some people have a varying understanding of what this word is, but it's basically knowing or ways of knowing and knowledge about each other. A way I like to talk about this is putting people before task. So getting to know each other before you dive into work, right? It's about how are your kids? How is your family? Where are you from? Who are your people, right? Understanding these things at the top of any meeting before you dive into business, right? So conocimiento is the term I usually use for putting people before task and understanding the person you're talking to. It's really great for building rapport. Use humor, be humble, use humility, but also still be authentic. Don't do anything that's kind of fake or not real for you. Pay a truthful, specific compliment. This matters. People love flattery, and there's a reason for that because we like we like flattery. So if someone has a really wonderful tie, or don't just be, oh, you have a great reputation. That's very broad. Find something very specific that you like. Hey, there's this article you wrote in 2019. I thought it was fantastic. I read it and it changed the way I thought about X, right? The more specific your compliment, the more meaningful it's going to be. So if you don't have your research done, at least have something like this possibly ready if you've done any work at all before the meeting or during the meeting. These things really do help unlock a hidden sort of psychology around bonding the two people that are in the room together. Next slide. Listening is like underrated. Like people talk about listening in all these ways, and some of us may roll our eyes, but listening is really about listening for clues. You want to listen to the language being used by the donor because sometimes the words that people use when they're describing the conversation you're in or the work you do or their understanding of the work you do is going to give you mountains of data and evidence and ammunition for your fundraising journey. So, for example, you might be listening under the words that someone's saying about their fears about the world, their worries, their passions, their priorities. The way they're describing things, you want to start shifting their language into your language, right? Yeah, exactly. I was calling it this, but yeah, it's that, Jack. So you want to listen because if their understanding of or framing of issues is a little different than yours, you want to start like matching their cadence and matching their language and matching their tone and including matching their framing of issues. Um, for example, if I was on a conservative or liberal bent, if you're talking about flooding in Florida, there was some research that if you talked about sea level rise, some people would tune you out if they were more conservative. But if you talked about flooding, more conservative voters would listen to you. So there are times where understand if the person you're talking to is using language, there might be a reason for it because political, cultural, religious, whatever it is, be listening for these little clues and connect with them on those terms. You can also bring good questions to tease out this language. So you're going to be listening, but you're the one prompting them to talk. So it's less about us talking and more about getting words and data and research out of their mouth, right? That's what we're trying to do during a major donor ask. Next slide. Be opportunistic. Now, the word opportunistic sounds bad. Like everyone, give me a plus in the chat if you think of a bad thing when you think of the word opportunistic. So people think opportunistic infection, they think opportunistic person, but give me a plus sign if you think of a negative thing. If you don't, then just leave it alone. But a lot of people do. Um, Being opportunistic means being entrepreneurial. Being opportunistic means you're looking for as many opportunities as possible. It does not mean that you are being predatory. It doesn't mean that you're being sinister. It doesn't mean anything like that. You're like listening for, they just said a thing that makes me realize that we should be talking about X. Right? So being opportunistic. I always say that water finds its way to the sea and it finds its way to the soil. Water always flows down. Water always finds a way because of gravity to the soil, to the sea. It always finds a way. As a fundraiser, my job is to always find a way, to the money. right? And listening for opportunities. My antenna are up all the time for something the donor says that makes me feel like, is this a right fit? Was I thinking about this gift the wrong way? And I should be thinking about it as in another different way. So staying on top of industry news, blogs, updates, trends. Today, there was huge news out of the Supreme Court about tariffs. If you're talking to someone you know and they're in industries impacted by tariffs, that might be a perfect time to bring that up because you're paying attention to current events. So keeping your antenna up, like listening for opportunities during the meeting and in the larger cultural conversation. For example, a donor may be talking about another group that they really love. Maybe you've never gotten money from this donor before, but they keep talking about this other group they love that's in your same sector. Maybe you have to pivot to a collaboration. Maybe the donor would give twice as much if you guys collaborated. Instead of just one gift to you, they would give a larger gift to the other organization in exchange for you guys collaborating, right? There are different things you're listening for to make the gift happen or to get more resources to the field. The goal of fundraising is really to raise the resources to get your mission accomplished. And so that's really how I see it. It's like thinking through what is in the donor's interests and your interests, shared interests. And be patient because it might result in a bigger gift and a happier donor down the road. You might not get a yes that day, but by listening and being opportunistic, you might get a bigger gift down the road. Next slide. Wrap yourself in a movement. So here's what I mean by this. It's a cute little dog there wrapped up in something. So some of my pictures are silly and it's just to keep things light. 9 times out of 10, donors don't need impact. They don't need proof. We love pointing to it. You're more likely to get a yes and you're more likely to get a bigger gift if you can prove impact. But many young, small, and new organizations, and even some organizations that had a rough year, they can't prove impact necessarily in a given window of time. 9 times out of 10, donors will respond to momentum, that things are working. We've got news stories that are happening. We've got more organizations in our coalition than ever before. We've got the best talent in the state on our board. We have better software than ever. Even though we lost this thing last year, we're smarter than we've ever been. Donors will give to momentum. They want to know they're on the winning side. They want to know you're getting smarter. Always wrap yourself in momentum. The overarching story of fundraising in this country is momentum. 90% of the money given to startup businesses are given to businesses that don't have a product yet, right? It's the promise that it's coming. Before Uber had an app, they had money, right? Before anyone has this prototype of this car, they were raising money because people are giving for the aspirational hope of the thing to come. So momentum, it's working. We've got so-and-so on our side. We won this patent. All of this comes down to painting a story of momentum. Always, always. Even if you don't have impact, talk about momentum. It's working. Something we're doing works. Are you winning more regularly? Do you have deeper relationships than you did? Are you able to convene a meeting and people actually come? You have convening authority, I call it. We would call a meeting of our peers and people would show up. That means that has some cachet. These are things that are not easy to measure, but you can get them done. Are you changing the issue environment, the words that reporters use to talk about your issue? These are things you can talk about. This QR code, I want everyone to scan this now or use the link I put in the chat. I'll put it down here again for everyone to get this bit.ly code. This will take you to a download you can grab for my 18 creative metrics. I'm a huge believer that there are 18 different ways we can talk about the wins that we're having, the successes we're having, and the momentum that we're building. But we're not in ways that you can't measure. Like most of us are so obsessed with measuring metrics and statistics and can we measure this? But most nonprofits do stuff that isn't measurable. We just have awesome stuff going on that's hard to measure. These 18 creative metrics are ways for you to go out and tell your story, including and with major donors, and go like weave a story of awesomeness happening inside your nonprofit. I'll give an example. The Human Rights Campaign, one of the largest LGBTQ civil rights organizations in the country in 2015 or whatever year it was when we won the marriage equality for LGBTQ people. The Human Rights Campaign was not part of those lawsuits. They were not part of those lawsuits that year. But if you looked at the annual report for the Human Rights Campaign that year, it was just page after page of happy, smiling, well-adjusted gay people getting married, right? They weren't even part of that lawsuit, and yet they were kind of riding the wave. They were taking credit. Everyone was so excited this happened. that every page of their annual report was pictures of people getting married, right? And they never said in the report, we made this happen or we won the lawsuit. They just wrapped themselves in a movement. So if things are working well in your sector or your region, ride that wave. You are contributory. You can't say we caused this, but we did contribute to it, right? If you are contributory at all to the successes or anything, talk about it. Don't be shy about talking about the contributions you've made to your sector. Next slide. People are not logical. They are psychological. They are not logical. They are psychological. People do not make decisions based on logic. Just get that out of your head. This is not a thing that humans do. We talk about logic. We like to make ourselves sound smart and say we're making logical decisions, but we are all guided by heuristics and biases and shortcuts and things that are simpler and all of these hidden little biases in decision making that impact us all the time. Whether we like a person, whether they're attractive, all these things are factoring into how we're actually making decisions. And if you understand basic psychology and the biases in decision making that people have, you can use these to your advantage when you're talking with people, not in a way that's manipulative, in a way that just helps you understand basic human behavior. Like most of these things are common sense, but I'm going to point out some that you might not have thought of. It's really about meeting people where they're at. There's this idea that if you just give people more information, it's called the deficit model of learning. If you just give people more information, they'll make better decisions. That's not how people work. People are willing to share memes they know to be untrue. People find meaning in things that aren't true all the time. That ongoing lifelong joke about the truth is, a lie can make it around the world while the truth is still tying its shoelaces. People don't make decisions based on facts and figures and truth. They make decisions based on things that have meaning to them. And from a psychology and communications perspective, think less about statistics, less about lists, less about proof, and more about things that have meaning. And again, just the last bullet, that it's not manipulation, it's understanding how people tick and using that in a way that is ethical to the advantage of a social or environmental movement. Next slide. So biases and motivations we're talking about, one of the things we love to do is to affirm someone's self-view. Most people think they are good people. They want to believe they are good people. Affirming that they are a good person is an important thing. I worked in the climate movement. I ran a national climate change think tank for 4 years. One of the things we learned is by telling people, oh, your carbon footprint, your carbon footprint. People don't like being told they have a carbon footprint. The more you tell people they're polluting, they're like, oh my God, I'm such a bad person. So don't reinforce. Tell them about the big corporations that are to blame. Point their ire in a different direction. But if you tell people you're bad, you're causing bad things to happen, they will tune you out because they don't want to hear information that's bad about themselves. People don't think they're racist, sexist, homophobic, or polluters. They just don't think of themselves that way. So if you say that, oh, like challenge your own privilege. People are like, I don't have privilege. Like people resist that because they don't want to think of themselves as bad people. So we have to stop using that kind of language when we're talking with donors, especially because we want to make sure we're affirming you're the kind of person who's generous, like you're the kind of person who gives back, right? This is the affirming someone's self-view is really critical. Ego and legacy. Again, just like the word opportunistic, ego gets a bad rap. Ego is really about feeling good, right? So the number one reason why people give money is ego. It's to feel good. It's that dopamine hit. It's to feel like you had a legacy. It's to feel like you did something. It isn't to get your name on a building. It's to feel like you did something right. It's like putting that sign in your lawn saying, I did something. So it really has to do with ego. Feeling like you're part of something bigger, it really matters. Give me a plus sign in the chat if you've ever seen the fundraising pyramid or the donor pyramid. It's like one donor at 10,000, two donors at 5,000. You've seen this pyramid, right? Give me a plus sign if you've seen that, right? If I walk into a meeting with a donor, everyone's seen it. Some people have an equal sign. Like, oh, they've seen it. They've seen it. All the math symbols. So what I would say is I would walk in with a pyramid with most of it filled in and show a donor, look at this. We have 9 of the gifts we need. We only need 1 more. Can you complete the picture? Right? Someone feels like they're finishing a story. They feel like they're part of something bigger. Like I'm part of 10 people making something happen. Can you be one of the 10 people that makes this shelter happen? Right? So that's part of ego. It's like, oh, I'm needed to complete this story, right? And then group identity. People like you vote. Michiganders like you vote. People like you, like graduates of this school, we care about community. Affirm group identity. Group identity is one of those things that matters more than facts, than statistics, than data, than anything. Affirming that my people, whoever my people or my tribe is, that I'm part of them and that I'm a good person, those are way more important in messaging when you're raising money than giving facts, figures, or charts. Peer pressure, reminding people that other people are doing things. We all think, that's why I say people are not logical, they're psychological. We all think we don't cave to peer pressure. We all do. We all want to do what the crowd is doing. If I call a voter and say, turnout in this election is going to be lower than ever, so your vote matters more than ever, that does not work as well as calling a voter and saying everyone is showing up to the polls. Your vote matters because everyone is showing up and people like you vote. Way more effective at getting people to turn out to vote. Doesn't make any sense, right? Logically, my vote would matter more if there was fewer people voting. People love doing what the crowd is doing. Tons of data reinforces this. This is one of the most universal things about communication is that people do respond to peer pressure. We like to give when others see us give. That's why people at a paddle raise at the gala, people give, they want to be seen giving, right? That there is something about that. So not only do I like being seen as generous, but when I see someone being generous, I'm more likely to be generous. Both of those things are happening because of peer pressure. We like to see generosity because it makes us generous, and we also want to be seen being generous. Next slide. So don't be held back by proof. Earlier, I told you in the chat with these two tools, the 18 creative ways. Don't be held back if you don't have proof that what you're doing is working. A lot of small and young nonprofits, for example, can't afford to pay for evaluation tools and evaluation studies to prove whether they're making an impact. Really, it's about aspiration. It's about aspirational language. It's about momentum, not proof. So going back to this idea of momentum, but through the aspirational lens, imagine a donor asking you about your impact, right? And they say, well, what have you done so far? Right? You can always come back to a donor and say, well, we haven't done anything yet, especially if you're a young or new organization. Well, we haven't done anything yet. We're just starting out. But let me tell you why I'm excited about it, why that makes me excited about our work. We get to set new standards and norms and innovation in our space. We aren't stuck in an old model. We haven't irritated anyone yet. We don't have any bad relationships or scorched earth. So twisting anything that you think is holding you back in your fundraising to something that actually gives you an asset. The other day, I had a client who was worried that because they had switched executive directors 6 months after one came in, that donors would be irritated. I'm like, no, flip the script. You tell your donors, the fact that we have systems in place to replace a bad ED shows that we are resilient, that we actually can survive the storm. We have systems in place, HR, search committee. It isn't like that we're weak. It is the fact that we got around this with a plan, right? Turn almost everything into an aspirational sort of message. Most people can't name one accomplishment of the group they gave the most money to last year. I'm going to say that again. Most Americans cannot name one accomplishment, one tangible thing that the group they gave the biggest check to last year got done last year, because people don't give for impact as their number one thing. They have a general warm glow around this organization, and they just know they do good work, right? So impact is important, but it's not as important as like aspirational vision and like the work of the organization in general. Next slide. So this is where it's about messaging. It's really about being pithy, being brief, being clear. And I am a huge believer that most of us are writing fundraising appeals and saying fundraising appeals in ways that are just regurgitating old bad messaging. Every grant starts with 44% of our population is underserved and lacking food, right? It's like, no. The final bullet on this slide is this thing called "You had me at hello." You want to start every elevator pitch, every grant, everything you're doing with a sentence, a statement that shocks people out of complacency and starts getting them to pay attention. There's a slide later where I'm going to give you examples of what I'm talking about here. But you want to be concise, you want to be compact, and you want to be pithy. And so you want to light a fire in the belly of the donor where they're like, I'm joining this fight. I'm going to join this fight with a check, or I'm going to go join a rally. You want to light a fire in their belly. You don't want to just regurgitate your mission statement. You want to figure out the essence of the problem that you're solving. And you might need to workshop that with your team, because a lot of people just say the mission or they regurgitate a list of programs. And that's not what we should be doing when we're in a pitch. use the language of your supporters, right? If your supporters who use your, let's say you have a, what are they called? Like a computer lab where you let people from the public come into your computer lab, your community center that has a computer lab. You might see it as a computer lab where people can make their resume and get online. They might see it as a community. They might see it as a place where they see their friends. They might see it as a place, the one place all day where they aren't judged, right? That's the language from your users. When you're talking with donors, part of the listening to your users and listening to your donors is understanding how they talk about your work, right? So use that language of your supporters or your donors, not just the things that your team and your social workers and your experts are using in your written appeals. So the you had me at hello language, we're going to get into in a few slides. Next slide. So here are some pithy examples. So I'm a gay man and I've raised money for LGBT causes my whole life. And one of the things I will lead off with, this is one of many, one of the things I'll lead off with is being gay has been easy, but the closet almost killed me. Let me explain. I've got someone's attention now, right? They're going to be like, huh, that kind of like, I wasn't thinking about it that way. So being gay has been easy, but lying about who you were was the hard part. One of my clients does safety skills. The second bullet, as our children grow older, they are more and more out of our sight. We must empower young people to take charge of their safety because we can't always be around, right? If I'm a parent or anyone who's got a small kid, that's going to resonate with me. I ran a bullying prevention foundation once, and this is one of the lines we would open with. Bullying is 100% understood social problem. It is 100% of people know what it is and hate it, but have probably done it. The good news is that it is also 100% preventable. A bullying-free school is not only possible, it's already happening. Do you want to learn more? These opening lines are going to do miles of work for you. The image on the right, we behave in traffic in ways we would never behave on foot. And we behave at a keyboard in ways we would never face to face because we don't have that human connection, being able to see someone's face. So my group was working on cyberbullying, and this is one of the things we would lead off with, right? So finding your we had you at hello, you had me at hello sort of statement is really good and an important part of being pithy. Next slide. Show, don't tell. We've all heard this one, but you want to be visual. Visual in your language, visual in your pictures. Of course, a little bit of Bob Ross here, never hurt. We can all paint with him. Spare the statistics. People do not remember statistics unless they're stark. I tell everyone, don't use statistics in your pitches unless they're stark. The one I said about bullying, it had to be 100%. It had to be stark. 100% of people have done it and 100% of people hate it, you know? So unless your statistics are stark, no one's going to remember what 23% of anything is. It's just boring. So don't use statistics until you're deeper in and you're talking like real numbers now about like a grant or something. But in your opening thing and when you're talking with a donor, these aren't the most important things, statistics. Show the work, show the results. If you don't have work or results to show them your office. show people trying to implement things. We have data that shows that people protesting for climate change is less effective than showing someone installing solar panels. Like showing people actually doing solutions is way more effective at motivating change. So showing people implementing your solutions can be really, really good. The visuals don't need to be from your own work. Show examples of other people. Show examples of people doing it on their own. This is what's possible. When we get enough money, we're going to be having these results like they're getting in St. Louis, right? So just show images of success like HRC did with their annual plan, their annual report, showing examples of other people winning and just riding that wave, right? Don't take credit for work you didn't do, but show people what winning looks like. Next slide. Testimonials, social proof. Those of you know social proof is like news reports and 5-star ratings on Yelp. These are all things that like show without data that people are using your solutions. But be visual. One organization I was running, we were sort of like a permanent coalition, and none of the donors knew what we were. They didn't understand what we were. So I gave them this visual of an orchestra. And I said, imagine all the other nonprofits in this coalition. Imagine all of them are talented musicians and they all know how to play their own instrument on their own. But if you put them all in one room and ask them to make music, it's going to sound like noise. What you need is a conductor. Our organization is the conductor. So I painted a picture for them about what it was we were. I used a metaphor. And then I gave them a picture to illustrate the metaphor. Our organization was the conductor to make sure all the groups in North Carolina were not duplicating efforts. And we were the highest, best fundraising coalition in the South of all the groups like us in the country because we were using really, really effective metaphors to raise money in North Carolina. On the right, there's a visual of a website where this no longer exists, but they put this slide up, and everywhere where this group, no homophobes, wherever they put this slide up, everyone in the audience lifted up their phones to take a photograph of this slide. No one could believe they were watching this in real time. They created software that tagged on Twitter anytime someone used a bad word for gay people or lesbian people, like you can like just bad words for them, it created a scoreboard at the top of this website. This was like someone saying no homo or that's so gay. It was counting in real time by the hour or by the day that this was being used. And they're like, this is what our youth are swimming in, right? And they just made a visual of it, right? So this is the stuff. I mean, people are galvanized by this. Paint a picture. And even if you slide this across the table while you're working with the donor and they leave with it, it'll be so vital to your fundraising. Next slide. Talk about show, don't tell. Make people touch something. Like putting the work in their hand is powerful. I sometimes joke, if you do beach cleanups, grab a rock from a beach, even if it's not a beach you've cleaned up. Walk into the meeting with the donor, put the rock in their hand, and be like, this rock could have come from a beach that was like completely covered in oil, but it isn't because of the work we're doing around the country, right? Like you want to make the donor touch something. So it could be a relic, an artifact, art, in a print, something physical, so a script, blueprints, an award, a plaque, something from your garage, something that tells a story, right? Like just bring in something for the donor to touch. Could be a handwritten note from a child thanking the charity for something, right? Bring someone impacted by the issue to your meetings. I've done that as a lobbyist. I used to be a lobbyist for gay rights, and I would bring a person impacted by homophobia to a legislator's meeting, and that would transform them because they actually met a person from their district who was gay. So like this is all like a tactile method. A note from a program recipient, blueprints of a building you want to build. Invite the donor to where the work is happening, to the front lines of something, or this pipeline, or to your office. Make it tactile. Next slide. So pivot. If you're talking with a donor and it ain't going so well and you think you're going to get a no, or you want to actually kind of move the conversation in a different direction, I always joke, pivot without hurting your core. So you don't want to change your mission. You don't want to change your core values, but you do want to be like water and find a way to the soil, find a way to the sea. You're trying to find a way to get that money and be opportunistic. So if you know your organization well enough, and you know, if a board member might not know the budget backward and forward like an executive director would, if you know your future spending needs, if a donor says, I'm spent for this year, but how about 2028? You know, I'm ready to come back to the table in 2028. A good executive director or development director would be like, actually, we're thinking of doing a scholarship under our strategic plan in 2028. Could we start talking about that? So that's like pivoting. So you might not get the gift now, but how do you get the gift committed for something else or something later? Even if you get the gift committed to a coalition partner, oh, it looks like we're not a good fit. Can I get you over to our coalition partner? They are great. They're going to remember that and they're going to help you out, right? You're going to find shared funding sometimes. But listening for opportunities when you're talking with a donor can help you realize that maybe we work in coalition, or maybe their interests are very tied to the stock market right now. They're like basically signaling something like the stock's down, I can't do this. Oh, so great. When the market's back up, should we line up another meeting? So listen for opportunities and pivot, just be flexible, but don't hurt the core of your organization. Next slide. So don't be the buyer and the seller. Lots of people do this in a meeting. You basically talk the donor out of it. This is one of the biggest things that people do. Hi, Steve, can you give us $10,000? I know the economy's bad right now and everything's really a mess, but I really could use that 10,000. Don't talk them out of the gift. Ask for the gift and be quiet. So very often we try being the buyer and the seller. See it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make assumptions about what they can afford. People think, oh, so-and-so's broke, or so-and-so's poor, or so-and-so doesn't have a great, they're just a social worker, or just a teacher. They can't afford a major gift. Don't get in people's wallet and don't get in their head, right? You want to be respectful, but don't make assumptions about what people can do. Sometimes if you meet with someone and it turns out they don't have the resources you thought they did, you can say, well, then that's fine. Can you help us raise it? right? Can you help us raise this 10,000, not give this 10,000? This is a great opportunity for you to participate, right? But don't make assumptions for people. Too often we leave people out of our solicitations because we are afraid they'll be offended or we're afraid that they just can't afford it. We are self-selecting out our audiences that we're soliciting because we're afraid we'll bother them or our issue is too liberal or too conservative. It'll upset them. Stop opting people out. Stop being the buyer and the seller. Put your ask in front of everyone, right? That's how you get major gifts. Next slide. Anchoring, really quickly. We've all seen this, the picture on the right. It's like a nonprofit suggests a certain dollar amount. Well, anchoring in major gifts is the same way. Anchoring is about dropping an anchor at the number or the price that you want. So we're running low on time here, else I'd give you more examples. But basically, if I've had several donors come to me and say, "Hey, Sean, if we were to give you 35 to 50,000, so listen carefully to this example. Sean, if we were to give you 35 to $50,000, what would you do with it?" And I would drop an anchor right at 50,000, the number right at the top. And I would say, well, for 50,000, I could do this. For 50,000, I could also do this. And at 50,000, I could do this. So I repeat the number 50 every single time, right at the top of their range, and I got 50K. 2 months later, another donor said, "Sean, if we were going to give you 25 to 40 in that range, how would you spend it?" I dropped the anchor at 40 and I told them everything I could do for 40 and I got 40. This happens all the time. So if someone's offering you a job, "Oh, this position pays between 80 and 100. Well, I would love to make 100. 100 sounds good for my skill set. 100 makes sense for me to leave my current job, right? You drop the anchor where you want the anchor to be, right? Does that make sense? Give me a plus sign if anchoring makes sense. Excellent. Good. Next slide. So this is called the Ben Franklin effect. Ask a favor, do a favor. It sounds crazy, but if you ask someone for a little favor before you ask for the gift, they're more likely to give you the gift. So asking for a favor builds rapport. It makes you connected to each other. It's why there's something called reciprocity in society. Someone opens a door for you, you hold the next door for them. It just makes it, our mind wants to resolve the fact that we're indebted to someone. So we do something for them right after they do something for us. So it could be a tiny thing. You walk into a donor's office and you see a beautiful painting. You could say, "Oh my God, I love this painting. Could you send me the name of the artist?" And that's a tiny little ask. And then, "Oh, sure, I'll totally send you the name of the artist." Now you're bonded. What you've done is you've created a little bit of rapport and a little bit of a bond. They are more likely to be warmed up to you for the bigger ask later. So this is called the Ben Franklin effect. It's been around a long time and it's something that totally works. So it's an additional opportunity to express gratitude. Thank you. I'm so appreciative that you would do that. I know it's a hassle, but thanks for getting me the name of that artist. If they offer to pay for the coffee or a cocktail, say yes. Let them do that, right? That it's bonding you. It's bringing you together. Letting them do a little kind thing before the big ask happens. So next slide. Storytelling. I think this is my last slide. So storytelling is really important because, as I've mentioned, people are psychological, they're not logical. Our brains are wired to hear stories. I tell boards and nonprofits, you don't need statistics, you don't need a list of your programs, you just need the story of one person you've served or hope to serve if you're new, the story of how you came to be involved in this organization and or the story of the origin of the organization. These are the three stories you need. If your board gets trained on having these three stories on the ready, you're going to raise more money. And they're very, very easy. So I'll wrap it there. I don't think I have it. Do I have any more slides? I think that's my last slide. Great. So I'm trying to create enough time for Q&A, and I know you guys still have some slides.
Yeah,
That's
no,
it.
I agree, Sean. Such great insights you're sharing. Thank you. And I'm gonna go super quick because I know you got to get out of here top of the hour. I want to. There's some good questions in here to answer. But just to wrap this up, and we've been focusing on the ask and trying to land those large major donations. But really, the ask is and getting those larger donations or any donation, it's not the finish line, right? It's the beginning of a deeper relationship. And I think too often donor stewardship is an afterthought for organizations. I was just talking to a recent client who bought our software. They bought our software because the solution they were using in terms of donor management was not allowing them to get out timely thank yous, essentially. And they lost a donor who's given them $30,000 checks once a year, every year for the past 10 years. And they lost her because they did not acknowledge that gift in a timely way. So it's super, super important, even after that gift is made, the donors are watching closely, right? At timely thank you communication, it just reinforces professionalism and personalized follow-up for the larger donations and segmenting those out and making sure that you are personally following up and making them feel heard and listened to and recognized is huge. And then also making sure you're having clear next steps and when you have those meaningful donor interactions, you should have well-defined next steps. Who's responsible for them? Who's going to follow up? When's it going to happen? Right? And making sure you have those solutions in place, like I just mentioned, so that those things are getting tracked, and they're not getting lost in email boxes, and you are making sure that you're retaining those donors, right? And for those major gift programs to succeed, you need discipline, consistency. Donors need to feel known and valued. Your staff has to operate with clarity, rather than scrambling around trying to get information. Um, and really, major gift growth isn't just about asking well, it's about managing relationships well, and that requires both intentional process and supportive infrastructure. So with that, I'm just going to get going to the Q&A here, Gabby. I think there's a few slides. Okay, here we go. If you
Yeah,
don't know, yeah, go ahead, Gabby, you go.
no, you go. I'm going to put a poll up if you'd like to learn more about
Yeah.
Ariva, but I'll let Chris talk through these. Well, next.
Yeah, just if you don't know who Ariva is, we've been serving the nonprofit industry for over 35 years. We have over 6,000 clients. We've done over 30,000 live virtual hybrid events as well. So we do have auction and event management software, as well as donor management software and digital fundraising tools. As you can see, we have a lot of relationships with national organizations that we've been vetted and approved by. Keep going, Gabby. These are the challenges that we see in terms of organizations using siloed solutions to manage all their different interactions with their constituents, and we solve those problems by, as you see here, many different pieces that are all fully integrated, including donor management, digital fundraising, auction management. We also have services, etc. Let's keep going. Gabby, if you want to learn anything more about Exceed further, our flagship product, please reach out to us or anything else. All right.
Thanks. And then Sean, did you want to mention anything here?
Yeah, just I do coaching, consulting, and training. So if you want to reach out, most of my work is executive director coaching. Feel free to go to my website, sign up, get my emails. I'm going into a big launch for my group coaching program like this month right now. But if you need help training your board, you need help with fundraising or boards, fundraising, and leadership. I've been an executive director 5 times, and I help people with like running the whole place. So let me know if you're interested.
Thank you. And then I'll go ahead and leave these up right now, but there'll be a poll if you'd like to learn more about Sean or have us send his information over to you. Go ahead and hit yes, and we'll make sure he gets that. All right, so we have a few questions that came in. Yes, you are getting a copy of the presentation as well as a recording. I saw that come up. But here, this question is from Tom. How do you bring up non-cash gifts during the meeting, like crypto, donor advised funds, stock, etc.?
Easy. You just bring it up. It's actually easier than cash. I mentioned to someone if it's about planned giving, like qualified distributions from their retirement, or like listing the charity on their life insurance, or giving crypto. I just bring it right up. I feel like that's easier. Do you have a gift of stock? It's easier for people to part with stuff that isn't cash. Like you might have a donor. You may have a gift acceptance policy where you don't take cash. You don't take gold, art, and people's timeshares. But if you anything that you can take, some organizations won't take crypto. But as long as you have a policy on what you take and what you don't, I would bring up all of it.
Yeah. There's technology too to enable the easier acceptance of crypto and money through DAFs as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We have another question for prospecting. Please rank the effectiveness of voicemail, text, emails, handwritten notes.
In terms of prospecting, like reaching out to the person,
I think so, yeah.
I think it's multi-channel because everyone's different. There are people that will not respond to my emails, but the minute I text them, they're like, "Oh my God, I'm sorry. I saw your emails. My inbox is a mess." I'm an inbox zero person. I'm meticulous with my inbox. So if I see an email, they're going to get a response within a day, or I'm going to tell them when I'm going to get back to them. I have complete control over my inbox. But texting is very effective. If every channel you've got, LinkedIn, so all the written note, all of these things, you may have to do for a major donor, I would be doing them all. And then ask the donor what's their preferred communications method and note that in Ariva or whatever software you're using. I would just like note that because I think that's if they're saying, don't come into my house and knock on my door, or if they say, don't call me at dinner, I respect that, but I use a multi-channel approach and use 3 or 4 ways to get a hold of them. They're usually not bothered by it if they're an existing donor. If they're a new donor, just kind of ease in, maybe get someone that knows them to make the intro or the warm connection, and then all of a sudden it's easier. But you just have to figure it out. I don't know how to rank those. It's really based on the person. If you're in a campaign environment where there's urgency, texting. If you've got longer time, handwritten notes.
Last question, and this one might be better, Chris, to have a follow-up call about. But here are parts of the agenda I would love to hear more about. Identifying major donor prospects, segmenting your database for insights, and using wealth screening effectively.
That sounds like a Riva questions.
Yeah, so I can put another poll up. If anyone would like to learn more about those individual questions and have a one-on-one consultation, go ahead and hit yes, and we can cover those a little bit more in depth.
There's
if
probably
you'd
some
like.
past webinars too that could help with that we've done. Yep.
Yeah, that could be a whole webinar on its own.
Those are whole webinars in and of themselves. Yep.
Yeah. Well, those were all the questions that we had come in during that. Sean, Chris, any final notes before we sign off?
No, everyone will get the deck later, I presume. So those QR codes for those other free tools and QR codes for some of my courses and stuff like that, you'll have all that. But just like be in touch, sign up for my emails. You'll get lots of value. Message me privately if you have something in today's talk that you love. I love raising money. I'm a total nerd. I read research from academic papers. I do everything. I do all the things, trying to understand the mind of donors and the mind of fundraisers. So I'm a total nerd on that stuff. If you want someone to come work with your board or anything like that, happy to do it.
Yeah. Thanks, Gabby, for putting this together. Thank you so much, Sean, for sharing your insights today. And I loved your pictures. You got me excited about the new Mandalorian Grogu movie. I'm looking forward to that one.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Sean and Chris. This was really fantastic. And thank you all of us for joining us on a Friday afternoon. Amazing turnout. But we hope you enjoy your weekend and join us on the next Ariva webinar. Make it a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.